Good morning. How are you? Are you
I'm
feeling
good,
better?
Michael. I am. Thank you for asking, Michael. Yep. Check that box right away. I'm feeling 100% better. Thank you.
Good. I'm,
Appreciate
I'm
you
glad.
asking.
I'm
Yeah,
glad to hear that.
I am
Um,
too.
so on January 8th, when you guys had your press conference, you had Rich McKay up there,
Uh-huh.
and you basically were saying he was leading the search. And then when you announced Raheem's hiring, you basically said that Rich McKay is kind of being out of day-to-day football operations. And then you had Terry Fontenot up there talking on Monday. What changed within those 3 weeks that I guess necessitated a change within how you structured the organization?
Yeah. Well, there was nothing really, Michael, within those 3 weeks. This has been an ongoing process. I'll take you back a little bit of history. Um, Rich got promoted in January 2023 to be CEO of AMBSE, which is the umbrella organization that is responsible for the Falcons, responsible for Atlanta United, responsible for the stadium itself. Steve Cannon, who is our vice chair, is transitioning. He's retiring, and he's been directly responsible for soccer. So part of this change was made in contemplation of that. Part of the change also was that Rich has been with us for 30 years, for 20 years, been in the NFL for 30 years. And during that time, as general manager, as president, served a variety of functions. And I think, given these last particular situations we had basically new head coaches and really new general managers, particularly this last go around. He served an important role in terms of helping them transition into their roles as a head coach and a general manager in the league. That is no longer not necessary with this group. I mean, Terry's been with us for 3 years, going on 4 years now. Raheem has been in our building for 6 years, been in the NFL for 23 years. So that transition role and that guidance role is really not needed. Rich, however, is still the CEO of the Atlanta Falcons, of the franchise, not the football team, of the franchise. That includes all the business parts of it. So he's still a very trusted colleague, will be very heavily relied on in a variety of areas, just not in day-to-day football operations. I might add also, of 32 teams in the NFL, there's, I think, 4 or 5. Example would be the Packers is one example where the head coach today, as of today, the head coach and general manager do not report directly to the owner. The rest of them, all of them, report directly to the owner or some form of the ownership. So in the case of the Packers, an example, which is a publicly owned franchise, their CEO actually performs the role of the owner there. And there's a few other ones where the owner is either physically not on property, lives in another area, is not there very often, et cetera. So they'll have a CEO that'll serve that function. But hopefully that answers that question, Michael.
Thank you.
All right, go to Tori McElhaney.
Mr. Blank, thank you so much for talking to us today.
Absolutely, Tori.
You talk about us knowing Raheem. I think all of us know Raheem, and
Right.
It was interesting with the introductory press conference that it almost didn't feel like an introductory. But for you, as you were going through the process of the coaching search, how did you see Raheem change since the last time that he interviewed for this position after the 2020 season?
That is a great question. Maybe the best question during the first press conference in this little chat we're having today. I think, Raheem was with us for 6 years. And I would say, during that 6-year period of time, worked on offense, on defense, worked in a variety of areas. A scale of 1 to 10, being a cultural leader, being somebody that defines leadership with coaches, players, people throughout the building, et cetera. On a scale of 1 to 10, I would say he's a 20. Today, he's still a 20. I mean, that hasn't changed. What I did see change, and to answer your question very specifically, I think the 3 years he had in L.A., where he worked with a different coaching environment, a different kind of setup, which Sean McVay operates differently than a lot of other coaches do, and their coaching scheme and setup and how they promote from within and just move coaches around in a much more lateral way. Excuse me. It was a learning experience for him. I think the collaboration that Sean McVay and Les Snead have, general manager there who worked for us for many years, was very, very close. And I think they were the true definition of what a collaborative relationship is. And one of the things that Raheem said during his press conference, which I thought was right on, if you really have a great relationship, it's almost you can speak without being spoken, without having to use words. I mean, people understand each other, et cetera. And I think he saw that relationship there. I think he also understood the importance, which I don't think, frankly, back in 2016, and he and I talked about this when he was here with us and left after that, is I think he appreciated now the importance of trying to build a coaching staff, understanding when you're going to have a winning team, you're going to lose coordinators. You're going to lose position coaches. So like in any business, in this case, business of the NFL, how do you anticipate that? And how do you build a coaching staff that, when you go through that and your best coaches are picked off and go elsewhere in the NFL, which is what should happen because they have opportunities, how do you maintain the consistency of play on the field, et cetera? And I think he brought back a plan which showed me that his thinking really had changed in that regard, and he had learned a lot in that regard. So I think as you all spend time with Raheem and spend time with his coaches and coordinators and coaches as well, and get to know them, I think you really fully appreciate that. The depth of his coaching staff that he's put together, to me, is remarkable. But it's not remarkable because they're ready to perform now. They're ready to perform, I'm going to assume, I know it's a big word, but I'm going to assume that we're going to be successful. We're going to win a lot of games. And therefore, in the NFL, what happens is that, whether you're Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur, Andy Reid, the coaches that win consistently, their coordinators leave. They leave because they become head coaches, or their position coaches become coordinators. And these organizations prepare for that. The head coach is the one who has to help prepare for that. I think Raheem's came back from LA with a intense knowledge of how to do that and how to put that in place in Atlanta, which is very important.
Josh Kendall.
By the way, if you ask a question, if I didn't give you a clear answer, I'm trying to, just like, just say, have a second one, whatever it may be. Yeah, Josh.
Mr. Blank, glad you're feeling better. You interviewed twice a guy who's on the verge of being the winningest coach in NFL history, in Bill Belichick. It'd be remiss, I think, if we didn't ask you how that process went, what drove your interest, and what ultimately led you to choose Raheem Morris against a guy whose resume, at least, is better than anybody alive.
Well, I would say, what drove our interest initially is exactly what you said. His record, 24 years for the Patriots, been coaching the NFL for, I think, 49 years, is incredible. Whether he's the greatest coach to ever coach the game, if not, he's on a very short list. So, that's really what drove our interest. We spent time with him, 2 face-to-face interviews. One I did myself because we were restricted. We couldn't talk to coaches. I couldn't interview coaches that were under contract till after January 22nd. And the second one we did in the group. So first of all, the interviews were excellent. One was very informative, as it might be, because you're talking to a kind of a living legend, somebody who's got, great historical knowledge, great knowledge of the game, a great perspective from all the years of success he had.
Arthur, you're muted. Arthur, you're muted.
And use somebody else's laptop instead of your own. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
We blame Bassity anyway. Don't worry.
Okay. Josh, where did you stop hearing me? I'm sorry.
You said he has a wealth of historical knowledge.
Yeah.
That you were sort of
I think So I think that we learned a lot during that process, as you might expect, and anybody would. And so it was never really. I would say this to make absolutely clear: there were 14 candidates. It was not any one of the candidates against Bill Belichick. It was all 14 candidates, I wouldn't say against each other, but each were competing with each other. And we selected the one that we thought, for a whole variety of reasons, was the best choice for us. I do want to make it 1,000% clear I want to go to 2,000% or 100,000, whatever percent you want to use. Bill Belichick never asked for, in our discussions, full control over personnel or the building or anything of that nature. He was very inclusive, very collaborative. He met Terry Fontenot. He checked out our people doing his own references. He sent me a private text, which I eventually shared with Terry, that he was happy working with him. So all these, I don't know, whatever you want to call them, want to be kind to the media, but all of these
thank you
things that were being produced by the media, but totally not true. I don't say it to patronize Bill, but to be fair to him. I mean, he never had that as a requirement. I mean, he's got his history, he has a way of doing things, et cetera, which have been very, very successful. Now, you could debate, is that true the last 4 years or so? It might be a little different picture, but, there's a lot of stories behind a lot of things. So I think it was a very good series of interviews with him. Our folks were impressed with him. I was impressed with him, as were a number of the candidates. And we just felt, all things considered, for a variety of reasons, that Raheem Morris was clearly the best choice for us. It's not a criticism of Bill.
Right. You guys weren't the only job open. I think there were 7 jobs open. He didn't get any of them. Mike Vrabel, guys who at least have the reputation for being more of a one-man show. It felt like, I think Terry even used the word with Raheem's press conference, collaborative mindset. It felt like potentially there's a shift in the league's thinking in terms of how you want to do this job. Fair?
I don't think there's a shift. I think if you look at any of the clubs that I mentioned a minute ago, any other ones that you might think of that are winning teams consistently in the NFL, Kansas City, San Francisco, 2 of the big games this weekend. L.A. I mean, you run down the list. Every single one of them, you've got a very collaborative relationship, truly collaborative relationship between the general manager and the head coach. If they don't see the team, the vision for the football team the same way, it is an uphill battle. Every day gets up, you got a headache, you got worse than a headache, it's going to get bad from. I mean, you have to be able to see the team way. That doesn't mean you agree on everything. You don't necessarily agree on everything. You may disagree on players, drafting, free agency, et cetera. You have a healthy dispute. You understand each other. You make a different selection. You move on, whatever it may be. But you have to have that connection. And I don't know of one team in the National Football League that's not successful where you don't have a collaborative, close relationship between general manager, personnel, scouting, and the head coach. I mean, you have to have that. I've said this before. I said it during the first press conference. The word power should never come into play. It really needs to be a collaborative, inclusive decision, and you make the best decision that fits the prescription that you're looking for your franchise. It's very important for head coach, coordinators, position coaches to be as prescriptive as they can. And the analogy I've used of late, because my dad was a pharmacist, is that it's kind of like going to the doctor, and the doctor says, this is the prescription that I need for my patient. So if you think of the doctor as being coach, coordinators, position coaches, they go to the pharmacist and they say, pharmacist, this is the prescription I need to fix my patient. And the pharmacist fixes it, goes out and puts that prescription together. Well, in that case, that's the job of scouting and personnel, is to have a tight prescription to fit it and to understand it. And then if you have debate on it, you have debate on it, but it's done in an inclusive way.
Thank you.
Joe Patrick.
Hey, Mr. Blank, thanks again for taking the time today to answer some of our questions. Terry said that, going through this coaching search process is something that ideally no team wants to do, but when you do it, you're better off for it as an organization. And so just assuming you agree with that sentiment, how do you think that the Falcons as an organization have improved outside of just what Raheem might bring as the head coach?
Well, I think if you do it really, too frequently, stay with the same analogy with certain kinds of medicine. They may be fine to cure something, but after a while they'll kill you. So I think you don't want to go on coaching searches all that often. I think when you do go on them, like in this case, talking to 14 candidates, each one, depending on how much time they have to get ready, does a pretty thorough evaluation of your roster. And a lot of times you're talking about really good coordinators, sometimes retired NFL coaches, sometimes coaches that are have been head coaches before, whatever it may be, so they can give you an outside perspective on your team that sometimes you don't hear on the inside. So I think that has real value. But I wouldn't encourage people to do it on a regular basis. I think the longer you can do without it. The last 3 years were a very short run for us. I mean, Dan Quinn was almost 6 years. Mike was close to 8 or 9 years, as I remember. So I mean, that's, you're shooting for that or longer.
D. Orlando.
Michael, I didn't fully answer your question before while you were waiting for DL, but it was never said. I mean, I don't remember exactly what was said, but the notion there was not going to be one person driving the search process. If you had to say it was one person driving it, ultimately it would be me, but it really wasn't me. It was a process. The process drove the process. There was a group of 5 or 6 key people. There was another 10, 15 people was helping out on the edges, et cetera. But basically, there was a core 5 or 6 people that were heavily involved in it. So it was a kind of a process kind of thing. Nobody was chairing it. There was nobody running it per se. The process drove it. And when we end of the day, we looked at all the candidates. It was all these people that were involved in all of the virtual interviews and the in-person interviews. They all gave their opinion as to what they thought and why they thought, what they did.
I think where the confusion, though, was, just to kind of push back on that, when you guys announced Arthur Smith's firing, it said that you and Rich McKay would be leading the search with input from others. So therefore, I think a lot of people felt that it was you and Rich leading the search. And then obviously later that day, it was the 2 of you up there and not Terry.
Well,
so that's where that, I think, came from.
I got you. Well, I mean, Rich was involved in the search. He was one of the individuals who was helping through the process. But I would not say Rich drove it. I wouldn't say Terry drove it. I would say the process we agreed upon as a group is what drove it. And again, a reminder, the only reason Terry was not there at the initial press conference is that we had wars going on several fronts. One is at Flowery Branch, where coaches were walking out the door that day, and they had, professional and personal needs to be attended to, and we were responsible to do that, as well as obviously dealing with the media. So that was nothing more than trying to deal with the logistics of this transition.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
Sure.
D. Orlando.
All right, finally. Hey Arthur. What was the delay in presenting Raheem to the public? It took 11 days. We just brought it up in the PFWA meeting about teams taking so long to introduce their coaches. And I'm just going to ask all 3 of mine here. Did you all offer Bill Belichick the job? That Boomer Esiason kind of alluded to that out here in Vegas. And then I need a Super Bowl pick from you.
Okay. So that's a lot. You're doing the same thing a couple of reporters did to Roger during his press conference. They asked one question, they asked 3. I got you. So I wouldn't get into that habit, but I'll try to remember them. The last one is the easiest one. I'm not going to tell you because I love both organizations. I love both of the coaches. Obviously, I probably have a special affinity for Kyle because he worked in our building for a long time. Mm-hmm. We went through Super Bowl 51 together. But I think they're both extraordinarily well-balanced teams, offensively, defensively. And I just hope for the National Football League, for America, for the world, that we have a really good game. The second question was Bill. The middle one was Bill ever offered a job. So that was reported by Boomer Esiason, and he said he heard that from some NFL executive. He was never, capital Never. Never. Bill would tell you this. I would tell you this. My dogs, who were probably with us during the second meeting, would tell you the same thing. I mean, he was never offered the job. So that's, where Boomer heard that from, I have no idea. And, I don't know Boomer really well. I know him, say hello to him, et cetera. I have no idea why he would be reporting on something from somebody who wouldn't have any idea either, whoever that might be. So, unfortunately. And there was a third question.
And why did it take so long to have the Raheem Morris press conference, 11 days from when he accepted the job?
it wasn't a question of too long or too short. It was when it was convenient. Raheem lives in L.A. He's got a big family. He's got a lot of logistics. His first series of businesses was to hire coaches, some of which are coming from L.A. So he and our staff, Ryan, Kyle, Terry, they were working literally day and night on recruiting and putting together the coaching staff. I ended up with a little bump from a medical standpoint, but that really didn't impact anything. Obviously, they did the press conference very well without me. So there was it was a question of just doing it correctly, not doing it quickly. Like everything else we try to do, we got to try to make sure we do it correctly, fully, be present, be available, and I think Raheem and the team did a great job.
Go to Allison.
Hi, Mr. Blank. I was wondering during this process, was there a chance or a moment that Raheem really stood out to you the most that kind of set him apart from everyone else? And also, with the talent you have besides the quarterback on this roster, are the expectations in his first year that you make the playoffs?
Yeah. Well, I think, as I said earlier, Allison, and I know he recognized you, I think, from his first 6 years here. So I think, from a cultural standpoint, I've known Raheem for a long time. I know his energy. I know his leadership. I know the endorsements from, people like McVay and Tomlin and Shanahan and others who think, well, he's long overdue to have another opportunity, et cetera. But, I think in my interview with him, it was very clear to me that the 3 years he spent in L.A. was very powerful for him professionally. Personally, I'm sure it was good too, but it was very powerful professionally. I think as I said earlier, I think he saw how a different, very successful coaching staff and tree was built and how limbs for that tree could be taken away, but because the base of the tree, the roots of the tree was strong, they were able to replenish those roots and grow back and limbs and grow back and continue to compete at a very high level. I think the fact that he took basically almost a complete rookie defensive squad this year and played very competitively with them throughout the year, I was very impressed with that. I was very impressed with the fact that he had put together in his mind a plan, knowing that we would be successful, and how if we lost this person, where would the people be on staff that we could actually promote from within and continue to move forward and not have that drainage of talent, which we had in 2016. As he and I talked about, and I talk about it actually, in a critical way, is that we had Mike McDaniel, we had Matt LaFleur, we had Kyle Shanahan, all on our staff at the same time, and we didn't retain him. Kyle, we knew was going to go to San Francisco, so I look back on that and I say, it was not probably the best we could have done, and I've learned from that, and I think our organization's learned from that as well. It's very clear to me that he's learned from that too. So I think, and the other thing I would say is that while he doesn't have, 50 years of coaching the NFL, he does have 23 years of coaching the NFL. So in a sense, he's kind of developed his own network, his own version of a tree, beginnings of a tree, if you will. He's well liked, he's well respected, he's well loved by coaches, players throughout the league. So, a lot of people enjoy working with him. And the impression I had is that he was going to bring together, now that he had another opportunity as a head coach, a very strong staff because of all these relationships he's built over so many years, whether it be in Tampa, or whether it be in Atlanta, or whether it be with LA, or whether it be his early years in Washington. So I think he was drawing upon all of that. So I saw somebody who had a great deal of experience, learning in his 3 years, and then bringing all that into bear in this new opportunity for us.
Michael Rusting, maybe a follow-up?
Yeah, I do. It seemed like you guys were going through second interview. You had other second interviews scheduled, and then you hired Raheem almost right before he was about to get on a plane to go to Seattle. It seemed like. Was there concern that maybe he was going to get hired by the Seahawks and that's why you guys acted as you did? Or was there something that happened in maybe that 24-hour stretch that told you that he was the guy?
No, I think we finished the interview with him. And I think the group met, and I think we all felt that way. I mean, he did have plans to go to Seattle. And you always, Seattle's a great organization. They have a great organization up there. Pete Carroll is still there. John Schneider, one of the best general managers in the league. They have an emerging team. So that certainly would be attractive to a lot of coaches. But from our standpoint, we just felt like, we had come to the point where we made up our minds. This was the right fit for us going forward, made the most sense. We totally believed in his vision. I understood the man, understood the history, understood the presence, understood how he had grown. And that, universally in the group, we're ready to go forward with him. So there's no reason to wait any further.
And just really quick, the quarterback situation, you described as deficient on January 8th. In these interviews, what did you need to hear from Raheem or maybe from other candidates when they're talking about the quarterback situation to make that person your hire?
Well, I would say, I don't think there's anybody that we spoke to who would define our quarterback situation as anything other than something that needs work. And I'm being kind. This is not a criticism of the players. I said this during the press conference. Sometimes what makes a quarterback either really good or not so good is not just how he's playing the game, but it's the scheme they're in, the plays that are being called, just a variety of things that go into making good quarterback play. Having said all that, it's very clear to everybody, all of our fans, all of you, anybody throughout the NFL, I would say, is that this is a position that we need to figure out how we're going to get better in 2024 and on beyond that as well, whether it be trades, free agency, draft, whatever it may be. There's lots of opportunities out there for us, and we'll look at them all. But there was nobody who felt there was no disagreement on that point. Anybody who was an observer of the game, a student of the game, would come to the same conclusion.
Go to Tori for a follow-up.
Yeah, follow up on that really quickly. I know that in his introductory press conference, Raheem and Terry both said that they've had limited discussions about the quarterback position. I was just kind of curious, from your standpoint, at what point are you kind of looking at like, hey guys, like I need to see the plan. What is the plan? I'm sure there are different levels of the plan, but for you in the timing of everything, what are you kind of looking for in that regard?
Well, I think you have to, this is not one of these things where you can take a year to develop a strategy. Free agency is coming up in a matter of weeks. Draft preparation, we're in the middle of it. All those things, how do you put that room back together again? We have new coordinators, new position coaches, new assistant quarterback coaches, et cetera. So, we have to bring together all of this knowledge and all this wisdom in a very short period of time. I would tell you quite honestly, 1,000% there's not a defined plan, but it is being talked about, and it'll be talked about pretty intensely, I would say, over the next coming weeks.
Josh Kendall.
That answer your question, Tori?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
I've got one that is completely out of left field. So if your answer is you haven't given it a moment's thought, we can just skip right on to the next one. But I wonder if the league, to your knowledge, has had any discussions about how to handle artificial intelligence and what it might bring to the game.
I would say there's been a lot of discussion about it. There's a heavy movement, I think, at the club level and the league level, the use of analytics in a whole variety of ways, which obviously embodies AI. How that's going to impact player selections, player evaluations, both soft tissues, hard tissues, medical standpoint, capacity standpoint. I think all those things will be evolving over time. It's still a game where you have to determine, somebody's love for the game, their passion for the game, their heart for it, et cetera. But I definitely think AI, like it's going to impact us, is impacting us across the board in our lives. I definitely think it'll be even more so in the NFL in the future.
Do you think the league could get to a point where it feels like it has to restrict the use of AI? I mean, I'm not smart enough to understand where all this could go, but you know, in theory, you could stick information, some sort of artificially gained information into this system and have it build your game plan, right? Or make a call from the box.
Yeah. I think, I mean, conceivably, I guess you could. I'm not an AI expert either, Josh, but I would say that, great decision making and great coaching, particularly in a game where you have to make decisions as quickly as you do, and a lot of it is based on what you see on the field, how you feel the players are responding, where they are mentally, physically, do they have strength to continue to compete in certain ways, et cetera. All that makes decision making for play callers, very subjective at some point. So all the analytics are helpful, and they give guidance, and they can give you some wisdom. But at the end of the day, you still have to make those decisions. It's the same thing when you're selecting a player in the draft process. You can look at all the analytics, and you all can do that today. And I've done it and played with it. Say, well, which is the best, whatever it may be. And they'll take all the years of high school ball, college ball, put it all together, et cetera, and give you a profile. But it doesn't really tell you, can they, project to the next level? Can they win at the next level? How much do they love the game? How much grit is in their commitment? I mean, there's a variety of things that you have to weigh, which I think AI is going to have a tough time weighing. But I do think AI will be more of a factor going forward in some form or fashion, as it has already.
Thank you.
All right, got time for one more. Justin Felder.
That was a really interesting topic. I want to hear more about that. Mr. Blank, if you're okay with a quick question about the World Cup. We've had the statement the day of, but now that we've had a week to let it sink in, what does this mean for you personally, for the city of Atlanta to have the number of matches and also to have a World Cup semifinal coming here?
Well, I think it's incredible. I should have added that to another thing would be, part of Rich's responsibilities is that, with the stadium, our commitment to soccer, et cetera. The World Cup is kind of a culmination of that. We'll have eight matches, including one semifinal match. It'll be incredible. I attended one World Cup in Brazil some years ago, and the one match I went to, it was a U.S. match versus, I can't remember who, but it was a U.S. match. It was like going to the Super Bowl. So if you think of that in terms of Atlanta, there'll be like 8 Super Bowls over a period of a couple of months in Atlanta. It's hard to fathom that and understand it fully, but this beautiful game, quote unquote, soccer was described internationally, will be coming to Atlanta, be living in Atlanta for months. So I think for Atlanta, for our stadium, for our fans, for our commitment to soccer, whether it be through Atlanta United, MLS, whether it be U.S. Soccer Federation, which is a huge commitment for us now, both for our foundation as well as for our businesses, potentially other aspects of soccer. I think it's a great sport. And I think we're becoming, in some ways, the mecca for soccer in all of North America. So, we'll continue to push on that and continue to figure out ways we can help grow the game. But the World Cup in 2026 in Atlanta is a huge deal. And our stadium deserves it. And our stadium, both for Atlanta Falcons to NFL, Atlanta United to MLS, has been ranked number 1 or number 2, generally number 1 in the last 2 years for fan experience. And that includes everything under the sun for how people are treated when they walk in the building, food, beverage, security, seating, just everything. And that's not done by us. That's done independently by fans across the universe that come visit the stadium against every other facility. So it's one of the reasons that our stadium, Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which for World Cup will be called the Atlanta Stadium, has gotten the kind of support that it has. I mean, FIFA is very demanding, plays soccer all over the world. We got an award several years ago in Spain as being, quote, the best place to play soccer in the world at that time. And that was our stadium, Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And when we designed Mercedes-Benz Stadium, we did it with the hope that eventually we'd be able to not only have MLS soccer, but potentially compete for World Cup matches in that facility as well. So this can be a blessing for all of us. Very exciting.
All right, that's all the questions we have. Are there anything else you want to close with?
No, I just want to thank you all very much for your interest, your time. As always, I appreciate, hopefully we've answered your questions. I feel a little badly because I feel like, some of this is, there's some rumors that have gotten out there, and I just want to remind you that when it comes to Falcons and we always will make ourselves available. I mean, I'll make myself available 24/7, providing I don't have anything else going on medically like I did for a couple of days. But and so will our staff. So I'd rather, when you hear things and question things about rumors and who you're hearing from, et cetera, if you go to the source, to us, we're always going to be straight with the media because we're always going to be straight with our fans. We always want the fans to know the truth. We always want to be as clear with the fans as we possibly can be, subject to competitive balance and things of that nature. But, feel free to ask questions. Myself, Raheem, Terry, whoever it may be, we're always going to give you answers, and always going to be answers as honest and as forthright as we possibly can. So I would encourage you to do that in the future, please. I've tried to clarify everything today that I know has been in the news for the last couple of weeks. I feel a little badly all that stuff is beaten around as much as it has been. It hasn't been productive for anybody, but I think I've hopefully set the record straight on those things today. Thank you all very much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.